practically middle-aged.
The sheriff calls us outlaws.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the Middle-Aged Outlaws podcast. This is episode 13 and we are still in January 1998. We're struggling to get out. We have spoke about the WWF Royal Rumble 1998. We've jumped ship like many of Vince McMahon's wrestlers have done, and we're now in WCW. But before we get into all that, I'm here with Adam. Adam, how are you?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. How are you?
I'm okay, thanks. How are you enjoying living in 1998 again?
I love living in 1998. That's awesome. Yeah, I wish it wasn't just the wrestling. You know, it could just go back. Simpler times.
Absolutely. No social media.
Yeah, great.
I was watching a documentary about Manchester United today, and it was kind of like a bit of it was made by Eric Cantona. I don't know, have you seen it?
No, I think I've put it on my planner because I was quite interested, but I've not watched it yet. It's
mainly going through from round about when Ron Atkinson was in charge, through to Ferguson in charge, and I was really, really enjoying the kind of mid-90s part of it. I was kind of thinking, this is like just going to become one of those people that just lives during an era. So, yeah, at least until we get to December, that might not be the worst idea in the world, to be honest.
Yeah, why not?
Everything was better back then. Maybe. Anyway, so we got our first taste of WCW. We got our first taste of WCW in 1998 with Nitro, and the first pay-per-view offering that they gave us, which was Souled Out 1998. The second Souled Out, I think, after their first ever joint promotion, WCW and NWO in 1997, which I believe was a gigantic. Wasn't it? I don't think it went very well at all, did it? The very first one.
No, I've definitely seen it. I don't remember it that well, but I think they were trying to do it a little bit different, and it just didn't. It didn't really work. I don't think. I think people were liking basically what they were seeing on TV. You know, with the NWO guys, almost an invasion style scenario, but I don't think they actually wanted it to play off the way that pay-per-view went. So, yeah.
They wanted to make it an NWO only pay-per-view, didn't they? The 1987 one, that's right.
Yeah.
I think it flopped pretty hard.
Yeah.
So we're here a year later, and the kind of, let's try and set out where WCW kind of was at this time.
Yeah.
I think this is part of the infamous 83 weeks of roundabout here, where they've topped the television ratings over Raw, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, they were winning at this stage, although I think they continued winning for quite a while from here on. The NWO was huge, and we'll sort of see as we go through, but there's a hell of a lot of talent in the company. Maybe not always being used the best, but for a while it was absolutely working. I think that sort of mix of a little bit of nostalgia, but in a cool new storyline compared to where people used to see them, and some of the other type of performers they had, which were, I think, really grabbing all different types of crowd at the time.
The thing that absolutely struck me straight away was the rosters, and we spoke last episode 12, when we talked about the Royal Rumble, and the WWF roster at this time stacked in some ways, and a bit flimsy in other ways, and there were guys on the roster that you're just a bit like, who were they again? Whereas you look at this WCW roster and it's absolutely stacked with talent.
Yeah, definitely.
Where to start? So at this point in time, the WCW title is vacant. and from what I've watched. And I watched the Go Home Nitro, which really wasn't the Go Home Nitro because there was a Thunder the Thursday before, and I didn't take that into account, and didn't watch the Thunder, which was a bit of a blunder. Did you watch the Thunder?
I didn't, no, and I think I always thought Thunder was very much the B show, and the big stars weren't even on it, but it turns out some pretty important storyline things happened on Thunders at certain points, because I did the same as you. I watched the Go Home Nitro, and it was a little bit of a muddle when I actually got to Souled Out, because they're referencing things and I'm like, I don't really know where that's come from.
It seemed like they maybe hadn't even set up a lot of these matches until the Thunder. But yeah, what I was going to say was that the WCW title is currently vacant when we pick up here. Sting and Hogan went. Can you shed any light on what happened between Sting and Hogan in 1997?
All I know, because I remember a few things that I've just heard about but I hadn't seen here, that there was a little bit of a convoluted finish, I think a indecisive finish or a dodgy referee or something like that, that went against Sting winning. Hogan retaining. It's happened both ways round, and I'm trying to get my head around which one these would have been.
Right.
Because I've heard things like Hogan was supposed to retain, but it was supposed to be a fast count, but then the referee didn't do a fast count.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think there's been all sorts of rumours that maybe Hogan had a word with the ref and just said, just count normal, and that just throws everything into confusion. So I can't say for sure that that's what's happened here, and it's been held up because of that, but I do know that happened somewhere in the programme between the two. Okay.
So the title's vacant. We don't have a title match on the Nitro before. We don't have a title match on the actual pay-per-view.
No.
Scott Hall is the number one contender to the title when a champion takes the title, because he won that gigantic. Is it a World War III? He won that 3-ring ridiculous thing that they used to do. So he's waiting on the champion, basically being crowned, so that he can then take on the champion. That itself has its own sort of impact, because if Hogan is champion, that means that he would be fighting against Hogan, and they're both in NWO. So there's a lot of storylines going on here. Who else we got as champions? I think the Outsiders are tag champs. Scott Hall seems to be taking pride in that, but I'd never once seen Kevin Nash with a tag belt.
I think that's pretty much spot on. I don't know how invested in that Nash actually was at the time.
Really weird.
Yeah. It's funny because when I'm watching these, and I think we mentioned the previous show, for WWE, I watched as like a refresher, because I had an idea at the time of what was going on, and I've since gone back and watched a lot of stuff. And you put just a few signposts in your mind and you think, that's what was happening there, that's what was happening there. With this, it felt a little bit more like, just jumping in and seeing some things for the first time.
Absolutely, same for me.
And not really having the sort of background to fall back on. But as we go through the year, that should, all firm up in our minds, I think.
Yeah, it's funny. I was this morning, actually, before we came to record, I was flicking through the Nitro to try and find the Nitro after, but on the network app I had to go through. It started at December 98 and I had to go all the way back, so I was like, it's almost like seeing like a Clockwork Orange version of all the shit that we've got to get through to watch this year.
That's the spirit.
There was a Ultimate Warrior flashing up. I was like, oh
no, that's this year.
As far as other champions are concerned, I think DDP's the United States champion.
Yes.
And Booker T is the TV champion, and they seem to be framing him as a fighting champion, and he seems to be putting the belt on the line every show to all comers.
Yes.
Which I like.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's the idea behind a belt like that. Yeah, we've also got Mysterio as cruiserweight champion.
Right. We do.
But yeah, it's funny because not all even though it's a big show for them, not all the belts actually feature on the Souled Out pay-per-view, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, and we'll get to the pay-per-view. But the thing that really struck me about it was that it was on for almost 3 hours, but it felt like a WrestleMania card, not in the fact that it was absolutely amazing, but it felt like a WrestleMania card in that it felt like it went on for ages. There just seemed to be match after match after match.
Yeah.
But I think that's a lot to do with what we said about the talent, and there's no real opportunity for, sometimes in WWF pay-per-views you get that kind of opportunity to take a breath and slow down, and this is just like a kind of throwaway match. But with the kind of talent that WCW have got at this time, it's like every match is high stakes. Yeah,
and I think there's a pressure to get a hell of a lot of them involved as well. A lot of the performers into a match, and some of them felt a bit rushed, but we'll talk about that as we go. Maybe matches that could have had a bit more build, but yeah, I think like you say, talking about the talent, it's probably the low card and the mid card where the difference really is. I mean, WWE had its top of the card talent, and it was definitely comparable with what WCW had, but I think as soon as you get below that, there's a lot of sort of lower tier talent in WCW that's really impressive here.
Yep, agreed. Shall we jump into the go home nitro, or the Monday nitro before the pay-per-view?
Yep.
And just maybe pick out a couple of highlights that kind of jumped out to both of us.
Yep.
Yeah, you and I, the very first match that we get introduced to with this, and basically like you said, for me this was almost an introduction to going back and watching WCW. This is new to me, so we get Eddie Guerrero looking young and like a full-on heel mode. Absolutely love it. Versus Rick Martel, in black pants, gigantic ass, really weird. He's massive.
Yeah, he is.
It really shows. Eddie got bigger as he went along, particularly towards his title run WWF. But Martel just looks gigantic, and Martel wasn't a big guy in WWF. But yeah, that's our very first match. I do not remember who won.
It was Martel.
Was it Martel?
Yeah, I think this is, there's one of the big criticisms of the time was that the WCW were signing up all of this previous WWE talent and kind of putting them over on some of their own up-and-coming younger guys. And they're obviously wanting to go into a little bit of a Martel story. He ends up featuring on Souled Out, going up against Booker T. I got the impression he was maybe pretty new into the company at the time.
Yeah, me too.
And to be honest, I don't think he's there that long. We might see that as it goes. He might just be gone after a few weeks. But
bloody hope so.
It didn't. He kind of stood out, and I don't really mean it in a good way.
Exactly. Yeah. There's just something not right there. I can't quite put my finger on it, but he just looked odd. It comes across a few times actually with various different guys, but it's like everybody's in black and everybody's in this kind of shiny leather stuff, and you're used to seeing Rick Martel in pink and being flamboyant, and he's coming across like he's quite edgy almost. Yeah. But it doesn't really work. Anyway, we've spent too much time talking about Rick Martel, and we'll probably speak about it more. So we get a little flavour of some of the infighting that's going on in the NWO, particularly between Kevin Nash and the Macho Man, Randy Savage. The Giant has split from the NWO. Am I to take it from this? He's away from them.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, is he not joined yet? But I'm pretty sure he has, and he's been in and removed himself from them, I think.
Yeah.
Because I think when he joined, it was a far smaller group. I
Yeah,
think
he was one of the earliest.
Yeah.
So him and Hogan are kind of having a little bit of a thing, and like I said, Savage and Nash, which feels like a much more serious beef. And I'm always concerned watching Savage because you never know if he's kayfabing or not, but it also it adds a certain edge to it, which is good to watch. We get a really good match between a surprisingly good match between Marty Jannetty and Chris Benoit here, and Benoit's heavy over with the fans. They love him. Yeah,
absolutely. And I didn't really know that Jannetty had been in WCW. I know he's one of the most fired ever people from WWE, I think. But, so it makes sense that he wound up there at a point. He's again, we'll probably find out he's not there very long, I would have thought. But as you say, Benoit he's over, and it seems like this is maybe just the start of what might be a little bit of a run for him. And I know at this era there's a bit of a glass ceiling for a lot of these slightly smaller, less name value guys, but it does seem like he's over, and he should be heading in the right direction towards the top of the card. And Benoit's in a bit of a feud with Raven, and Raven's got all his kind of followers called the Flock. Something that's going to be very consistent anytime we're talking about WCW is that most matches are going to end with a disqualification, a run-in, an interference. So most matches we're getting on Nitro basically start, then end when somebody walks in and cracks somebody with a steel chair. So I think we get that here, and Benoit's a little bit outnumbered against the Flock. Is this when Dean Malenko kind of comes and helps him? Or was that... Yeah, is that at the pay-per-view? I can't actually...
Oh, maybe it is.
If I've got it in my... Yeah, that's at the pay-per-view.
Okay, right.
Yeah, I mean, you're right in that it's just sort of running central as we go through both these shows, but there's definitely a theme there. But I loved the Flock. There was always something about the Raven character, and he is the type of character that should lead a faction, that would have followers. It
Absolutely.
Just makes sense.
Yeah.
And when I realised that was the storyline here involving those two, I thought this could be pretty good stuff.
Yeah. Love Raven. That character that he plays, where he's not trying too hard, he's almost not trying hard enough, and it's absolutely perfect. So composed. He grabs the mic and he says something completely wild that sounds like something from like the 18th century, and you just believe it. What else we got here? We've got Scott Hall cutting a promo on Larry Zbyszko. I don't know why they're feuding, but the fans love big legend Larry. I know these two had a history coming up through the territories, because Hall goes way back. He must have started incredibly young, and I think at a point there was a little bit of a mentor relationship, but I don't know how much they've played to that on here, because here it basically seems like Zbyszko is just a bit of a legend who's now an announcer, who I assume his issue with Hall is the fact that he is NWO and they're basically trying to take over. He was his boy.
Okay.
I like that.
Yep.
Again, we'll get onto it in the pay-per-view. That's probably my favourite match, the pay-per-view, but we'll get onto it. I remember texting you saying, oh great, Scott Hall's in a feud with Larry Zbyszko, like I could give a flying Ravens Flock about that, but anyway, we'll get onto it. Some other stuff that's going on, they're quite subtly trying to show that the Steiners are not on the same page. We get a really good match between Mortis and Booker on this show, and if you've not seen the post on our Instagram, go and check that out. Booker tries to kill Mortis with a power bomb off the top rope, and it is absolutely brutal. I like this Mortis character. He's almost a bit like WCW's version of Kane, but a bit more agile.
Who is it you said it was again from WWE?
Chris Kanyon.
Okay, right. Because I knew the name of the character and I thought there's something familiar about him, but I couldn't place him in my mind.
One of those guys that's really good in the ring, but
yeah,
kind of not really given much of a gimmick or anything like that. But I like this whole presentation of this character. I'm sure by next pay-per-view will be long gone, but I've wrote down here that we've got a very long-winded promo between Ric Flair and Bret Hart.
Yeah, I didn't know whether this was like the beginning of the setup for their match the next night, or whether they've been doing this for weeks. I
didn't get any sort of inclination as to why they were having a match.
To me, it's supposed to be a story about respect, because Bret refers to himself as best there is, best there was, best there ever will be. Flair's out there basically saying, well, I'm the best, have been forever here, and it's disrespectful for you to say that. But I don't know, you don't really want, for me, Bret in these long-winded exchanges. I know Ric Flair's cut a lot of good promos back in his heyday. I think he needs to be up against a certain type to do that. And it never really felt like it got going. They
don't really mesh, do they? Aye.
Nah.
There's no, again, it comes up quite a lot, but there's no obvious heel and face dynamic. It's just kind of like two guys that are good.
Yeah.
We get quite a good match between Jericho and Juventud Guerrero on this episode Nitro, and it finishes off with Hogan versus the Giant. I don't have much notes on this apart from shock horror. It ends up in a big brawl between Sting, Luger and the Giant fighting off against the NWO.
Yeah, it was good in a way for me, just to try and get my head around who's on what side at the time and things like that, because even in some of the other matches they're referring to certain guys as if NWO affiliated, and I'm thinking I didn't know they were ever involved. There was one other thing I was going to pick out, and it runs into the pay-per-view as well. You mentioned the Steiners earlier and the fact that they're doing quite an obvious, Scott's turning and we know what he's going to become, but the situations between him and Bagwell, the interactions between them are really weird. It's just these, either in the middle of the match or just after one's partner has been beat down, let's just pose and look at each other,
smile at each other.
Yeah, and I know they're going to kind of align the two at a point, but I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, I think they do it on the. Do they do it on the pay-per-view as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, they just kind of like you say, smile at each other and pose. Both their gimmicks are that they've got big muscles.
Yeah.
Buff Bagwell's a character, eh?
Yeah.
It really makes me smile.
I never knew. Like I know he got involved in the NWO stories, and I think he was quite central to some of them at points. I never knew before that what sort of character he was meant to be, because I just hadn't seen enough, I don't think.
I like this little kind of 3 or 4 man offshoot of the NWO that's you've got Conan, Buff Bagwell, Scott Norton, and the artist formerly known as Virgil, what do they call him? Vincent,
yeah.
Whose main thing seems to be let people know on the camera that they're in the NWO and stand at the side of the ring. he got a good deal. But I quite like this little kind of mid-card offshoot of the NWO. It works for me.
Yeah, and I suppose it's where when the faction became as big as it did, you had to break off some elements of it into their own separate storylines. So it made sense, I think, to do that. And yeah, they group together quite well.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, let's get excited and jump into the pay-per-view, will we?
Yeah, I did notice.
Oh,
I think on Nitro and on the pay-per-view,
oh dear.
they definitely had a structure to their shows. So when we go in and talk about the first match on the pay-per-view, I think they tried to get a bit of, high-flying, high-tempo action straight away off the bat. And then obviously we know what sort of talent's going to be on at the end, the end of the card. But it felt like almost a card of two halves to me.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly how I felt as well.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump in. So sold out 98. The problem with calling your pay-per-view sold out is that when the pay-per-view opens, you then have to say that the building is sold out, and Tony Schiavone struggles a little with saying we are sold out. It's sold out.
Yep.
It sounds a little awkward. So just a little pointer for no doubt when NXT steal that pay-per-view name.
Yeah, I like Tony Schiavone, and I'm not sure if you ever hear his podcast at various times, and this may have been an era of it right until the end from here. He's apparently just incredibly pissed off because he's never given any info at the start. He doesn't know a lot of the time what match is even coming up and things like that.
Really?
And he does at some points just sound a little bit flustered. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of put that down to kind of his thing. I didn't realise that was like. I
think
real life.
We'll come to a point we talk about where he is definitely playing flustered, but yeah, I think a lot of it was genuine frustration, because I think a lot of these things were kind of put together last minute.
Shocking. So who have we got here as our commentary team? We've got Schiavone, we've got the American Dream, baby.
Yep.
Dusty Rhodes, thanks. And Brain. We've got Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Yes.
Is that who we had? Aye.
Yeah.
And somebody joins us later on, maybe either Sabisco or Iron Mike Tenay. I can't remember which one it is.
I think it's Mike Tenay.
Is
I
it?
think. Yeah.
It's Iron Mike Tenay. We've got Tyson in WWF, Tenay in WCW. So we start off with an absolute banger, no sarcasm at all. An 8-man Lucha Libre rules tag match.
Yep.
I'm going to need your help with the teams. We had Juve, Super Calo, Chavo Guerrero, and
Lismark Jr.
Nice, thank you.
Yep.
And they were taking on La Parka, who is absolutely now my favourite wrestler. Awesome. Silver King, Psychosis, and El Dandy.
El Dandy, yeah.
Who we also saw the Nitro after. First thing that caught my attention here was an absolute class sign. Roddy Piper is a gimp.
I need to know to look out for the signs, because just watching stuff in recent years, I think anything that's funny or controversial gets taken off the fans, so I need to remember to properly pay attention, because there'll be some brilliant ones in there.
This felt to me, remember when we reviewed the Rumble, and we had that match that Sonny refereed, the minis, the mini superstars or whatever they were called. This felt to me like somebody had given them like the Mario mushroom, and that's what we got with this match. It was like a really good fun match with all the sort of stuff that you'd expect from kind of Lucha Libre Mexican guys, but it was brilliant to watch.
Yeah, it's really entertaining, and it's fast action, and it's kind of a bit of a spot fest, but in a good way. It's really entertaining. There's always something going on, catching your eye, and I sort of mentioned before the structure. I think this is their way of. They'll have fans that want to see this kind of thing, and this is this bit for them, and there's a few other matches you would include on the card of that, but they did bring a lot of be it either Lucha Libre or Japanese style wrestling. They did tend to have something a little bit different on their shows in segments that I think was there for up in the tempo, getting off to a fast start, that kind of thing.
I think sometimes when it comes to something like this, it's for some reason it's more when WWF do it. I kind of feel like they're trying to force feed me something that I don't really want, and kind of switch off. WWF certainly went through a period doing that in 1997. I remember they had a bunch of guys in the Royal Rumble 97, and one of them was so proud that he wouldn't, about his character, that he actually just climbed up the top ropes and just jumped out the Rumble because he wouldn't allow anyone to eliminate him. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I remember this situation.
But with this, I don't feel that. It doesn't feel contrived. It just feels like an entertaining match.
I think this is an example of something that WCW were doing a lot better than WWE were, because I think WWE were trying to do something similar, and I don't know if it was presentation or talent or a bit of both, probably. It just didn't work. It always felt bottom of the card, I think, on the WWE shows, whereas here it feels like it really has its place.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And I think even the way the commentators sell it compared to WWF, like you'd have King cracking jokes about them, and almost as if they're also on the outside looking in like us, as opposed to the way that the WCW commentators are selling it. It's just the same as a normal match.
Yeah, and I think they quite often, I assume they did it here, they bring Mike Tenay out for these, because he was probably in the seat in place of Bobby Heenan, because he is quite good at, having a bit of knowledge and describing the moves and things like that. So I have a feeling Heenan maybe comes out after this match finishes.
Okay.
And Tenay goes back, and we'll see him later, but that's another story.
Cool. So some of the things that jumped out for me, I think I knew this already, but Juventud Guerrero's amazing in the ring.
Yeah.
Who else? I wrote this Silver King guy is absolutely incredible. Like, these are quite big guys. Some of the stuff they're doing is unbelievable.
Yeah, the agility's amazing for the size of the guys. It's really impressive.
We've got Chavo Guerrero eventually hitting an unbelievably brutal tornado DDT to win this match, but clearly the highlight of the match comes at the end. Would you agree? Or do you not know where I'm going?
Nah.
So Chavo hits his brutal tornado DDT to win.
Yeah.
And so what team is he on? He's on. Yeah, so he's in the team of Juventud, Super Carlo, and Mizark Henry. What did you say? El Lizark? Did you say?
Lizmark Jr.
Lizmark. That's I've just butchered that man's name. Lizmark Jr. So our resident chairman La Parka is not interested in this at all. Smashes the other team with the chair, and then does his little strut thing, which is absolutely awesome, and then turns the chair on the rest of his team. Yes, as well.
Yeah. So is this part of the reason why La Parka is now your favourite wrestler?
One, he's essentially wrestling in his jammies.
Yep.
2, the strut thing. 3, he's good in the ring.
Yep.
And 4, he's like comically, like if this was Stone Cold taking everybody out with a chair, you'd be like, whoa, he's nuts, he's crazy. He's just comically taking everybody. It's like it's fun and everybody's having a great time.
Yeah.
I want to see him in the main event against Hogan. No selling everything.
You never know. I mean, we've a few more events to watch. So, yeah.
No spoilers. La Parka v Hogan. So yeah, a fun way to start the pay-per-view. I was hooked.
Yep.
You'd watched this pay-per-view before me, and let me know in no uncertain terms that you had an opinion about it. So I went in with low expectations, but then I seen this. I was like, what's he talking about? This is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was a good match, and I think it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It got everyone up and ready for the show. Really good entertainment. It's it's the right kind of match to be on first. I think you're not too bogged down in the storyline about it. It's just entertainment, really. And it was good. And you know, some of these guys I've seen quite a few times, but some of them probably not at all, really. So it was really good to see some of them perform. Good fun.
Yeah, totally agree. Our next match was Raven with his flock at ringside against Chris Benoit, who again, like we said earlier, is a big fan favourite. It gets a big pop. So I've got an issue with this match, Adam.
Okay.
Raven comes out the ring and then they make an announcement that the flock are banned from ringside.
Yeah.
This is before Benoit gets out, I think.
Yeah.
Then as Benoit's walking out, they say, for this anything goes match.
Yeah.
Now, how can it be an anything goes match if you've banned people from...
Yeah, there's a few things here. So they initially describe it as a Ravens rules match. And then it becomes pretty clear that that just means, no holds barred, no rules, basically. And then that, in turn, somehow seems to mean that a ref can just banish Ravens flock from ringside, which really doesn't make any sense, because if that is a Ravens rules match, he's really screwed himself.
Yeah, he needs to review those rules.
Yeah, definitely.
But apart from that, it's a good match.
Yeah.
What do you think of it?
I enjoyed it, and it's a good story going on between the two. Raven is being Raven, like you mentioned, at times looking really like almost nonchalant about it all. But once, he's in the ring and he's attacking somebody, he's pretty intense. Benoit is, the ridiculously technically proficient guy that he is. They're talking, the commentators are talking them both up to at least some extent. I think particularly Benoit and his skill set. And I thought it felt like it fell in the middle of quite a good feud between the two.
Yeah, it was a very back and forward match. We had like the classic heel dictates the pace to start off with, and Raven was beating him down, but then Benoit, at one point it just switched and Benoit took over and he just started pummeling Raven. It's nothing new to us to see Benoit doing that, but it's just incredible to watch him go in the ring.
It's a little bit the same as well with what you mentioned about Eddie. It's quite noticeable. He's not a tall guy, but it's quite noticeable how much smaller he is physically, Benoit, at this point, and he looks so young as well. And he will have been compared to when we saw him in WWE a few years later, but quite a physical transformation both those guys ended up going through. Yeah,
it really is. A kind of brutal finish here. We get, I think Benoit puts a chair onto Raven's face and stamps on it.
Yeah.
To start off with. Then he decides to do his flying headbutt onto a steel chair, which is never a good idea, Chris. If you're listening, no. Flying headbutt onto the chair. Both seem to be out. Then from nowhere, Raven hits his DDT.
Yeah.
So we're going back and forward. Eventually, Raven goes into the crossface. They're kind of doing the Mick Foley thing where he's smiling. I don't know if he was smiling, to be honest. Kind of hard to smile when someone's got their hands grappled round your chin. I was kind of scratching my head at the referee lifting his arm as if I don't think that would knock you out either.
It was pretty strange. I could see what they were going for, because obviously they wanted it to seem like, Raven's a little bit crazy and he's enjoying the pain, like, as you say, they did with the Mick Foley segments so often. And don't get me wrong, I think that does play quite well into his character, but there wasn't an awful lot of logic in some bits of it.
No. A different submission would have worked. Anyway, it's picking holes. Raven goes out. The flock come out to try and beat down Benoit, and the man with 1,000 holds the greatest Texas clover leaf in the world. Dean Malenko comes out and helps him out. They stare down each other and leave.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what the dynamic was meant to have been between the two, Malenko and Benoit, because I think we, being WWF guys from back in the day, were used to seeing them associated with each other. So I wasn't sure if this was brand new or if they'd previously had a tandem that had been disrupted in some way, and that was just a little bit of it reforming. Not too sure, but just knowing the history of the two, it made sense that he would be somebody that would come out and help.
Yeah. And I don't know if Perry Saturn actually came out with a flock. Perry Saturn seems to be in the flock, but doesn't always come out with them. Maybe he wasn't out at that point. But he looks odd with hair. It's funny seeing him.
Yeah.
So that's quite a good match. Like putting the finish to one side, it was a good back and forward match, and it doesn't veer wildly into like trying to be extreme or outrageous for, like just to be extreme or outrageous. I think anything that they do using the stairs or the chair or whatever, it all works. So good match for me. Yeah,
I enjoyed it as well, and it's two performers that I liked watching, and I remember always wishing that they did a bit more with Raven's Flock, because I think the possibilities were there for that to be huge. And Benoit's capable of having a good match against anyone, and also I think he was always pretty believable as someone who could hold his own against anyone. So yeah, I thought it was a good rivalry. I've no idea if it goes on from here. It seems like it would naturally, so we'll see, but I like the matchup between the two.
Cool. Next up, we've got a cruiserweight match up for the Cruiserweight Championship. Two WWE legends, Chris Jericho, who at this point is the Lionheart Chris Jericho, and Rey Mysterio Jr., who looks, it sounds ridiculous, he's got a mask over his face, but he looks ridiculously young.
Yeah,
like really young.
I don't know what age he would have been. I'm just going to look. He's like 23 here.
Is he?
Yeah, but yeah, he could, again, saying it when he's wearing a mask, but you would believe it if somebody said he was like 17 or something.
Totally.
Like that.
I don't know if it's just his physique or what, but yeah, he looks really young.
Yeah.
Like this feels a bit, at the time watching this live, this would have been a great match, but I think, what are we, over 20 years on, we've probably seen this match about 1 million times.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. For me, I mean, I enjoyed it while I was watching it, and I always enjoy seeing Jericho. I think he always brings something. I did quite like the character that he was being. He's one of these heels that seems to have deluded himself into thinking that the crowd all love him.
He's a fan favourite.
Yeah, and I think he plays it well. Yeah, so it's really, it was the end of the match that grabbed me, really, to be honest.
So yeah, it's something I did want to, just before we jump into the end there, there's a couple of things. Jericho working with the cruiserweights gives him the opportunity to perform a lot of his moves that are really impressive looking moves that he wouldn't get away with performing if he was further up the card.
Yeah.
He works really well with like the smaller guys. The other thing, there's a point where they're both on the outside and he sets up the stairs and he runs along, jumps off the steps and hits Mysterio with the most ridiculous elbow. It looked really, really like it really, really hurt, but maybe Mysterio just sold it that way, but it looked like Jericho was going into business for himself, as they say. It looked like he was taking him out. Anyway, yeah, I go jump into the finish here.
Yeah, so we've got Jericho winning by submission. I can't remember what they were referring to the hold as at the time.
Lion tamer.
lion tamer. Yeah. So there is some good interaction between the two. You know, Ray's jumping and bumping and things like that. And as you say, it does let Jericho kind of play. He's almost playing the big man in the match, which he has to, because he's, you know, quite a bit bigger than Mysterio. But it makes him look quite brutal in a lot of the offense that he shows. But I did enjoy when Jericho takes the mic after getting the win, and he talks to the crowd about, you know, how this is great, but the most important thing for him is that you all love me. And he's really selling it, and he's, you know, you then hear the boos and his expression changes, and he just starts brutally attacking Ray as like a reaction to this crowd hatred that he's experiencing. But what I really enjoyed about it, because, you know, someone attacking someone after a match isn't extraordinary, certainly on this card, but
WCW.
But he's playing like he just lost control for a second, because he's like backing off after saying I'm sorry, as, you know, Ray is properly selling this beatdown that he's had. And I really enjoyed that. I just thought, this is, you know, it's early stages of seeing Jericho the character, and he's just adding something to it, something to what could be a pretty bland, mundane story, but he's just got this character arc going through it, which I enjoyed. I just thought we've seen versions of it get done by others, and we've seen versions of it that are a little bit further along than that, people snapping and losing control and things, but I enjoyed Jericho's version of that.
Yeah, me too. And you know, things that we've heard in podcasts and interviews recently, it sounds like a lot of this was basically Jericho coming up with this sort of character himself. And he was basically, you know, he could do whatever he wanted on TV, not because he was so over or anything like that, but basically because it sounded like they didn't really give too much direction as far as the further down the card guys were concerned.
Yeah, I think I've heard Bischoff say a few times on podcasts and interviews and things like that their focus was the top of the card guys, and I'm sure I've heard him say several times about Jericho in particular, I would love to take credit for that, but that was just his idea and he just went with it, you know.
Wow.
And he's obviously, to be honest, I think Bischoff is so kind of dismissive of the low card guys at the time that he's just fine with it. He's doing what he wants, that's fine, it's not causing any problems. So he's basically able to do what he wants at that point, within, you know, limits, I'm sure. You know, he's probably not supposed to be doing things like calling out Goldberg, which he does far further down the line, but when it's just somebody like Mysterio and he's just doing his thing, I think nobody, to be honest, they're probably not even noticing, but it was good for entertainment purposes. Absolutely.
And then on the Nitro after, he comes out in a Mysterio shirt, and he starts talking about how bad he feels about Mysterio, can't wait to see him back in the ring and all this sort of stuff. So he's continuing with the gimmick.
Nice.
Which works. Okay, next up we've got Mean Gene Okerlund in the ring, and he brings out JJ Dillon. JJ Dillon is the chairman of the committee of something of the people that run WCW. He's the figurehead. JJ Dillon then brings out Roddy Piper because JJ Dillon and this faceless committee can't make a decision. So in times when they can't make a decision, they ask Roddy Piper.
Yeah, this was terrible. I didn't like. I was thinking, so JJ Dillon's the authority figure, but doesn't have authority or won't use the authority.
He's an indecisive authority figure.
Yeah, the whole thing felt like an excuse to get Roddy Piper on the show.
He's not exactly the most level-headed, independent adjudicator that you could get. The man's off his rocker.
Especially when Hogan's involved, and he's had this, you know, lifelong feud with Hogan. But yeah, I don't know. The segment I just thought was pretty badly done. and you end up with Hogan and Sting in the ring, who were the people involved in the previous title match with the controversy, and you've also got Scott Hall in there, who is due a title shot.
Yep.
And it kind of they play up the angle that once the decision's made by Piper, after he sort of fakes the fact that he's just going to hand the belt to Hogan briefly, he then makes the decision that Hogan and Sting should meet in a match at the next pay-per-view, which I assume then means that Scott Hall is going to get his shot at some point down the line, but it seemed he very much wanted it next. He felt like he should have been involved. And again, I think this is playing up another crack in the NWO between Hall and Hogan here. Hogan must have, they reference it a few times, he must have delivered some sort of promo indicating that everyone in the NWO has a position. So you're either top or you're, somewhere in like a ranking system in the NWO. And he very much must put it across that he's top and Hall is somewhere a bit lower. And Hall, this almost seems like him realising, I'm wasting my time, I should walk away because I'm not getting anywhere type thing. And yeah, it's fine. They put that sort of element of doubt about whether can Hall be trusted when it comes to Hogan and other NWO members. But I just thought the whole segment was pretty bad. Yeah,
me too. It was a Nitro segment basically.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was just if Piper was contracted, it had to be in the pay-per-view, but I didn't like it at all. But it got us to a point of we can now look forward to Sting and Hogan at the next pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got the TV title on the line. The seeds were sown for this on Nitro when Rick Martel came out to help Booker T fend off someone.
Yeah, he was basically... Was he being double teamed after his... I've not put enough in my notes about this, but when he retained his title, he was beat down after his match.
Yeah, I think Perry Saturn maybe came in the ring, tried to beat him down.
Yeah, I think that's right. And this was, I believe, in the ring at the end. Booker T and Martel had a bit of an interaction where, Martel kind of asked for a title shot, and given the fact he'd come out and helped him, he'd done the honourable thing, Booker T grants it. So the match is happening pretty much straight away.
You could say he's got more power than JJ Dillon if he can just book a match like that. But.
Yeah, or certainly more decisive.
Tyson fears Booker T. Great sign in the crowd. Did you see that?
Saw that one. Yep.
I like that. I've written here, I am not objectifying anyone, but Martel's ass is huge. And then Tony Schiavone says Martel's never looked better.
Wow.
So I assume that he is a fan of certain type of voluptuousness.
Yeah.
Something that was... I'm not going to comment much on this match. I thought it went on for far too long. The crowd were really, really low for this. I don't think they were into it at all. But yeah, something that they kept talking about was Martel's snapped, his temper, he's got such a short temper. And I'm like, what? The man sprays perfume and flamboyantly dances about.
It also didn't really seem like he had snapped in the match. But never mind. Yeah, it wasn't great. And he never felt, we talked about him seeming a little bit out of place before. And this just didn't seem like a match that should be a thing. Or certainly not on a pay-per-view.
Nah.
Felt weird.
And it should have been. It possibly should have just been a squash, or something like that. But yeah, whatever.
It's the third longest match on the card.
Is it really?
Yeah.
They're building this story of Booker T being a fighting champion, so
yeah,
I think we're going to see this every Nitro, every pay-per-view that Booker, as long as he's champion, he's going to be fighting someone and giving people shots at title. After the match, Perry Saturn attacks Rick Martel for reasons. And let's chalk that up as the 4th match in a row where someone gets attacked after the match.
Yeah. Yeah, we were watching these, I'd watched and you were watching, and I don't think I'd realised just how many consecutive matches this happened at the end of until you pointed it out, and I thought, yeah, and then it kind of keeps happening.
Keeps going now.
Yeah.
Okay, our next match, possibly one of my favourites on the card. We had Scott Hall with his little, like someone is taken under his wing, Louis Spicolli.
Yeah.
Young Louis Spicolli refers to him on Nitro. I don't know how young he is.
Yeah, he was, I think, quite highly thought of, but had a lot of issues, I think.
He's hanging about with Scott Hall.
Yeah, I know he'd been in ECW for a stint, and he was apparently a really nice bloke, really funny bloke, but I think he was struggling with some demons, as they say.
Okay.
And I don't know if that, because I don't really remember him in ring very much. I know he was associated with NWO at various times, but it's one of those where I see him and think, oh yeah, it's that guy, but I couldn't tell you a match that he's in, really.
They seem to be playing it off like he's this young guy that wants to be in the NWO and he needs to kind of prove himself. Yeah. So he's hanging about with Scott Hall, and Scott Hall's giving him a chance. Then we've got legend Larry Zbyszko, and the American Dream comes off the commentary table to stand in his corner.
Yeah.
Dusty being all that sort of embodies WCW. He's got the WCW hat on, and yeah, he's in Larry's corner backing him up. Like I've said, like I mentioned, I really enjoyed this. I think in spite of what I expected, I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
What do you think of it?
I enjoyed the match. I remember, this is maybe unfortunate because it might have shocked me, but the turn that happens mid-match, basically as soon as I realised this match was on the card, I thought, oh yeah, that's when this happens. Right. And I wish I hadn't, because, you know, it's probably more fun if you don't remember things like that going in. But yeah, it's quite a, in terms of the actual match, it's quite a sort of old school style.
Yeah, exactly.
And I thought they meshed pretty well together. I mean, given, I don't know what age Zbyszko would have been at this point, but I thought Hall got a very good match out of him, actually. Yeah,
totally agree. Hall was selling amazing, and it's something he always did. He's always really good at selling, but I think he was selling everything that Zbyszko was bringing really well. There's probably not a lot of action to talk through. It moves quite slowly. There's a lot of walking around each other and sizing each other up sort of stuff, which comes to a kind of moves much faster. Spicoli gets in the ring, starts getting involved, so Dusty comes in and starts doing his American Dream sort of dancey stuff. He elbows up Spicoli. He then tries to go for Hall, inadvertently hits Zbyszko. At this point, Hall starts like doing shaking his hands and doing the double pointing thing. And I knew that Dusty joined the NWO, but I didn't know it was here. I didn't know that what was happening. I have to admit to being properly shocked here. I like the twist of Dusty taking off his shirt and having the NWO shirt on. So yeah, we've got Dusty joins the NWO, and do they just beat him down? They beat down Zbyszko?
Yeah, the three of them end up beating him down. I was thinking poor Louis, because he's taking all those elbows, but obviously he knows what's coming. He'll be in on it. He just has to take them and roll out of the ring. But yeah, I think when you think of, like you mentioned earlier, when you think of WCW guys, Dusty would be up there as a mainstay in the eyes of most. I know he had a a stint in WWE, but I think everyone thinks of him as WCW guy.
I think he was head booker at WCW for a long time, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think various points. I think he did it 2 or 3 times. And the sort of some of the early stuff I've watched on the network, he's in the title picture with the likes of Flair. And you do in the same way that you associate Flair as WCW guy, I think you do with Dusty. So he was one of probably the more emotional ones they could have got to try and generate that kind of reaction from a crowd, obviously from Tony Schiavone, who takes things very badly. They reference a few times, I think he's walked away from the announce desk at a point, and they reference the fact that he was his mentor. He was the guy that got him involved in wrestling, even in the days before there was a WCW. He got him to try out as an announcer and all that kind of thing. Basically gave him a job by the sounds of it, and he feels so betrayed by this turn. And I think Bobby Heenan does a really good job of kind of winding him up about that, even though he's also playing a pro WCW anti-NWO guy. It's like he can't help himself because he realises how much it's affecting Schiavone. He just keeps kind of picking at it.
Yeah, Heenan's funny at this point in time because he, like you say, he's pro WCW and against the NWO, but you think of him as a kind of as a heel commentator. It's quite a funny dynamic that's going on. But like you say, he keeps bringing it up and picking away at it. It's quite funny. Yeah, but it's well done, and like I said a few times, quite an enjoyable match that looked like it was going to. I couldn't see the point of it. But it's quite a good use of Scott Hall, given that they're saying that he's number one contender. So to give him something to do in between, there's this feud that works, and you get obviously a storyline progression with Dusty Rhodes. So it's good.
Yep.
Oh dear. Okay, so, next match is a 6-man tag. We've got our boy Buff Bagwell, Scott Norton and Conan representing the NWO, who have got amazing music, which I assume is dubbed over. Do you think it is?
Yeah, I noticed because there's a few that are dubbed over on the show.
Jericho's was obviously dubbed over because it's his WWF music.
Yeah. So I think it was. I'm not totally sure, but I think it was.
I really hope it isn't. It's like this kind of country song, but just with like the odd NWO over top of it.
Hopefully it was what played out to the crowd. But,
we've got them 3 representing NWO against the Steiner Brothers and Big Ray Traylor.
Yeah, boss man.
No, this is Ray Traylor. Looks like he fucking got dressed in a trailer. What is this man wearing? A t-shirt with arms cut off it, tucked in to really high-waisted leather trousers. Come on, Ray Traylor.
You don't think that looks working for him? No?
You know what I thought? As soon as I saw him, because I don't think he was on the Nitro. You know when your mate's got a new girlfriend and he starts dressing completely differently and wearing like really weird clothes. That's exactly what I thought. It looks like he's got a new bird, and she said, you'd look really good in these. He looked ridiculous.
Amazing.
Not a good look for you, Ray Traylor. He's definitely not listening to the podcast. Sorry, boss man. My bad.
Yeah, he was one of my favourites as a kid. Not as Ray Traylor, I must admit.
Big Ray Traylor. Yeah, he kind of came from nowhere. They kind of stuck him in to progress this Steiner's storyline that you've got going on. I think during this match, does Rick Steiner start this match?
Yeah.
Basically takes an absolute pummeling.
Yeah, they keep referencing the fact that I think we saw it on the Nitro that when Scott starts, he never tags out. So Rick starts this match, and then he doesn't want to tag Scott. He wants to tag Ray Traylor because they basically realise they're not going to be in the match if Scott gets in. And Yeah, it's another step along for the Scott and Rick storyline in terms of the break that we all know is coming, and they're laying it on pretty thick. They're making it pretty obvious what's going to happen. But I think this was probably the first time I would have noticed a transformation in Scott in terms of the physical, because his look's starting to change. He's not quite got the blonde hair yet and the goatee beard, but he's on his way to the look he had when he became a single star.
Yeah, like you said, we're on our way to Big Papa Pump. It's just a matter of time. He's got those muscles that when he tenses look like pyramids. They're so odd looking, aren't they?
It's weird. It's really weird.
And there's a point in this match that Scott's trying to get in so desperately that him and Big Ray Traylor actually stood at the same side of the turnbuckle, and they're arguing, and Ray Traylor's shouting back at him, "Look at my awesome fitting shirt, mate." But I've not written down how this match ended. I think it ends up in... Does Scott Steiner end up going mad?
Yeah, so Scott gets in and basically destroys everyone, wins the match, and then you've again got another weird interaction between him and Buff Bagwell, doing their face and then looking at each other.
Smiling at each other.
Yeah, and Bagwell's like, he's not looking at all phased by the fact they've just lost the match, and he's just doing his flexing and looking at Scott. It's
weird. I'm sure we've spoke about it before. I think it might have been something that Pat mentioned to us, but that Steiner screwdriver, that's a movie.
Yeah,
that's terrifying.
It's scary looking. Yeah. You just wouldn't want to be taking that move.
Not at all. Just a quick note, I really like, I don't know, how do you feel about Conan? I really like him.
Yeah, I liked Conan. He never... I don't remember him ever getting a massively prominent role, although there may be his own sort of element of the NWO he ends up kind of leading, right. I think, to some extent moving forward, but he could go in the ring, and I think he has a reputation as a good talker as well. He maybe just, there's so many guys, especially in the NWO, that would want the mic, that I don't know what opportunity he's got. But yeah, I always thought he was a really good performer and a good character as well.
Yeah, same. So it all leads to here.
Oh no.
The next match is the Battle of the Big Guys. We've got big, sexy, giant killer Kevin Nash. He asks to be referred as that on the Nitro afterwards. No longer called Kevin Nash. I'm the big, sexy, giant killer versus the Giant. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you know, I'll just mention a couple of things before we get where we're going to have to go here. Nash is huge. And, we know how big the Giant is, but Nash is right there. He's massive. He's not got the same, bulk and things like that as the Giant, but he's incredibly tall. And I think I kind of forget that at times, just how big he was. But there's points like where there's, trying to deliver a boot and things like that, and he's getting his boot almost all the way up there. And for two giants to be able to go toe to toe, they are kind of almost the physical equal of each other. But yeah, this match goes scary.
So again, before we go there, this was, I didn't mind this match for what it was. You know what you're getting with two big men like this, and there can't be many people that look forward to a Big Show match, but there's some good stuff in here. It's crazy seeing somebody pick up Nash the way that Big Show, that the Giant is doing. He's picking him up and sort of side suplexing him and stuff, and it's really odd to see. There's a good bit where they both go for there's a bit where they both go for a double. They both go for the big boot and kind of do like the classic Rocky, Apollo, and they knock each other out. That's quite good. What about when Nash leapfrogs the top rope?
Yeah.
What is that?
And I've never... Because you don't think of him as an agile guy. he's not an agile guy. Like you say, they are doing some things in there that you maybe wouldn't associate in a big man match, but they're both big men. It's again, I'm similar to you. I thought this was a decent match because my expectations were pretty low when I knew who it was going to be, and I thought, well, when's the beatdown come in? You know, when's the interference or whatever? Because that's what you expect in this. But I thought they matched up pretty well.
Yeah. And the beatdown comes. Hogan comes out the ring. Somebody distracts the referee. Hogan hits Giant with a chair shot. At some point, Kevin Nash brings in a pot of scalding hot coffee, and according to the brain, you can see the steam coming off it.
Yeah, he really sells that.
Yeah, he said that before they showed the slow motion replay. He should have thought about that one. So Nash throws scalding hot coffee in the Giant's face, and then, if you've never seen this match, it's worth watching. Simply for the end, where Kevin Nash pops the Giant's head between his legs, and I've literally written down here, please do not try to jackknife him. Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, so my notes say he was probably 2 inches away from killing the Giant. I saw this happen, and then I actually, despite the fact I should have known there would be a replay, I actually went back to see it again because I know he's alive, so I know he's fine. And I thought, was that as bad as it looked as I first watched it? And then I looked again and thought, yes, it was. That could have been incredibly serious.
He's so lucky. He's so lucky. So Nash goes for the jackknife, and it looks to me, layman that I am, it looks to me like Giant does all the right things. Like I think he does his side of it, but Nash just seems to give up.
Yeah,
he gets him up so far, and then
I didn't know if he was slipping a little bit, and then I thought with the coffee or whatever it was that they threw on that clearly would have been cold. I didn't know if he just, like, the grip was lost a little bit or something like that, because it looked like the release, he wasn't ready for the release, you know, and then he was so close to just landing fully on his head, and with the weight of the Giant, it was horrible to watch. Yet for some reason I watched it twice, and then the replay,
and they showed it a lot. The way that he lands, he's basically folded in half when he lands. He's like you say, he's got the weight of his hips, his legs come flying down, and Nash almost lands on top of him as well. He takes everything on his neck. I don't know what the extent of his injuries were, but this was probably the worst thing I've ever seen in a match as far as injuries that weren't supposed to happen. It looked horrendous, and that includes what's his name, Vader popping his eye out, and that thing that happened to Sid Justice / Sid Vicious when he jumped off a second rope. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up on YouTube.
There's a whole compilation if anyone's looking for them.
There is. I'm sure one drunken night we sat and watched through them.
Seemed fine at the time.
I did. When you're young and don't really think about it. This was horrendous. The thing is, he's obviously fine, and like you say, you know he's alive and all that sort of stuff. But the night after, they're playing it up, and they show it. They show the replay 1 million times in slow motion. Nash is like saying that he meant to do it, and they have all these different superstars commenting on it, saying they can't believe that the NWO would go to these lengths and all that sort of thing. So that they've jumped on it and used it. to their advantage, I suppose. But it's just shocking to see. It really is.
Yeah.
Do you remember how the match actually finished? Is it a disqualification? Did he pin him?
I think he pins him after the powerbomb, because obviously they've had the distraction and all that, which does the bit to keep the Giant strong in a sense that he didn't lose fairly. But yeah, I think it's a pin from the jackknife.
Okay. It's probably about the first clean finish there's been on this card.
Yeah.
So yeah, go out your way to watch that. Kevin Nash v the Giant, Souled Out, 98. Unbelievable. So after that, I think at this point, or maybe after the next match, we get told that this is a triple main event. So that was our first of the three. Our second of the three main events is Ric Flair versus Bret the Hitman Hart, who's making his pay-per-view debut for WCW.
Yeah.
Again, very similar to what I said about Jericho versus Rey Mysterio. We've seen this match probably a million times. I enjoyed it. But both guys have got things that they do every match. And yeah, you could probably have written a script for this match for everything that happened in it. That makes me sound like I'm moaning about it. I enjoyed it. But Flair needs to take the big back body drop. Flair needs to eye poke, and Bret probably needs to dictate the pace and to focus on one area of the body to work on. Bret needs to be thrown chest first in the turnbuckle, which I was never ever a fan of. Always looked horrible to me. Yeah. How did you see it?
Yeah, similar, and I think it's odd, or it's strange in a way, because I know that Bret Hart has, gone on the offensive a little bit against Flair by saying that he basically had the same match over and over again. But
really?
Like you say, yeah, and apparently they've smoothed things a bit now, but I think there was quite a bit of heat between them at various points, and Flair, I think, is quite rightly bit back and said, well, so do you. But I think the thing that I've heard Flair admit is that even by this time, he's long past his best, and he has a view in his mind of what fans want to see from him. So he tries to do those things, and it's a case of, here's a guy who used to wrestle hour-long matches that probably were quite varied back in the day, but now when he's in there, he is just going through his routine, because he fully believes that's what people want to see from him. I thought it was okay. I think in a way they match up well together, but in a different way, I just didn't really have that much interest in seeing this match.
No.
I think
which is crazy because it's Bret Hart v Ric Flair.
I think for Hart to come in and have this being his first pay-per-view match, that's fine. It's up against an established WCW guy. He does come in with the best there is, best there was reputation, and here's a guy opposite him who legitimately could be referred to as one of the best ever, so that's fine. I didn't think it was the hottest type of storyline that he could have been put into against him. It seems to be about respect, and again, that's fine. It just didn't grab me. None of it really grabbed me.
Yeah, there's probably, you and I could probably record like a 6-hour podcast on all the different options that the things that they could have done with Bret Hart when he came into WCW, and we wouldn't have come up with him feuding with Ric Flair over who's the best wrestler.
Nah. I'm not sure if this was like a kind of a one and done type situation, if they both kind of move on after this.
Well, Bret gets the clean win. He slaps on the sharpshooter and Flair taps, so you would think so.
Yeah.
It doesn't really lend itself to being open to more, but who knows?
Yeah.
Well,
and I think again, the finish it's the right thing to do. I think to put over Bret clean, because he's again fairly new in the company, and you can kind of go anywhere with him. He could either align himself with NWO realistically, or he could oppose them realistically. There's plenty of options out there, whereas Flair, I think, is beyond being a main protagonist in any of those type of storylines. So it's the right kind of finish for me.
Yeah, same. And yeah, if it does close it off, then it leaves the door open to something completely new for Bret Hart.
Yeah.
I just think you're bringing in the WWF champion under the most controversial circumstances in modern wrestling. Stick him right up front in your title picture somewhere.
Yeah.
And have his face on everything. But yeah.
What was it Vince apparently said to Bret all those years ago? The WCW wouldn't know what to do with a Bret Hart. I think it was true.
Aye. Like the night after, we see British Bulldog coming out in such a there's like no fanfare at all. This is his first. I think this is his first ever appearance on WCW TV, and he just appears randomly on Nitro and challenges Mungo McMichael to a match.
Okay.
It's just really odd. You've got you wouldn't have known it, but we've got Jim Neidhart's in WCW at this time as well.
Yeah.
You've got an opportunity to, similar to what you're saying with Raven and Raven's Flock, you have got that opportunity to give Bret Hart backing as well and make him look like Bret Hart.
Yeah.
But yeah,
the Bret Hart stuff, I loved him as a kid when he first became singles and he had the Intercontinental runs and all that. I was fully behind that. But one of my favourite versions of him ever was right towards the end of his WWE days, when he had Neidhart, he had Bulldog, he had Owen, and he had Pillman around him as this sort of expanded Hart Foundation. He's the leader. He's obviously up against Michaels for a lot of this, but his stuff up against Stone Cold as well. I thought that was the time he was delivering his best promos. He seemed most sort of confident in a heel persona, apart from in Canada, obviously. But it seemed like when he had that backing of that group, he could be the man in that scenario. Whereas when he's on his own, I don't know if it was a confidence thing, or if, again, maybe they just didn't have the storylines for him in WCW. Nobody could think of where to go with it.
Yeah, I just think you've got. We're going to come on to speak about Lex Luger versus Macho Man here as the main event, but I just think you've got guys at the top of the card that are nothing like half the wrestler that Bret Hart is. Lex Luger in particular.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just so odd, and it's obviously all about the NWO.
Yeah.
But I don't know, you could put him in somewhere. Anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bret goes over Flair with a sharpshooter. And we are now treated to Michael Buffer, who seems to pop up every now and again on these WCW pay-per-views to announce for the main event, which I guess they are kind of going for like a big main event type feel. It doesn't really do it for me, I have to say. It just feels a bit odd. But we've got Macho Man representing the NWO, and he's got his own little NWO music that's got ooh yeah and all that sort of stuff going on that it's quite liked. And then we've got Luger, who they seem to be placing as, I think him and Sting as being like kind of WCW's big hope as far as taking down the NWO. We've talked about Lex Luger on here before. To me, in WCW at this point, he lacks any sort of personality, and he's just kind of like a smiling, I'm a face. There's nothing else really about him. It doesn't do it for me at all.
Yeah, I've always been a big Savage fan, and he's, in terms of like character, he was always one of my favourites. He had that wild side feel to him, that kind of unpredictability. He could put together excellent matches in the ring. He could be babyface or heel, even without without even changing his style or his personality that much, he could just kind of switch.
Yeah.
I'm similar to you with Luger. He never interested me. I remember, I think this, I don't know if this might, the couple of years age gap between us might make a difference here, but if you remember when WCW used to have a programme on ITV late at night, can't remember what day of the week, but it was kind of my first introduction to WCW stuff before Nitro was a thing, actually.
Was this Blue Ropes, Blue...
Yeah.
Aye.
Yeah, and I got to know some of the characters on that, and I remember like seeing the likes of Luger and thinking, he's massive, but even then it didn't feel like he had personality, and I would see sort of a contrast of guys like Brian Pillman, and this is long before he was loose cannon or anything like that, and he seemed to have something like charisma, just, you know, something a bit more to him. And then when WWE brought Luger in, and initially went with the narcissist heel gimmick, and then went for the, you know, flag waving, let's try and
kissing
make him
babies.
yeah, let's try and make him the new Hogan type thing, and it didn't work at all, because he didn't have that personality, that charisma, that he couldn't talk, any of that, and he seemed like a guy who for so much of his career was up near the top of the card, and I assume it was all based on the look.
It has to be.
Yeah.
He can pick those big guys up. He does that torture rack, and he can pick the likes of Scott Hall up and stick them on his shoulders. And
yeah. It felt to me like, if you've got, like, this being the last match felt strange to me. I wouldn't have had great expectations of a Nash Giant from a match point of view, but it was okay. But I would have thought that would have been on after this, just because in my mind what Luger is, and even Savage, who I love, he was very rarely the top guy.
He's not the main event guy of even of the NWO. Aye.
Yeah.
It is odd. Something I liked about Macho Man that was seeing here in WCW versus not really seeing it in WWF was the dynamic of Elizabeth. We're used to Elizabeth being this like kind of holier than thou lovely woman, but here she's even in the way she's dressed, you can tell that she's a bit more edgy, and she's doing a lot of sneak attacking when the ref's back is turned, and you got that with Sensational Sherry when she was with Savage, but you never got it from Elizabeth, and it was something I wasn't expecting to see, so that was a little bit different. I quite liked that. Yeah, same.
Just added a little bit of a different dynamic to the duo, because much as she did the odd distraction and things like that back in the day, never really physically involved in anything. It was different. I enjoyed that as well.
So eventually, through this match, or towards the end of this match, I should say, we have Scott Hall and Hogan come down to the ringside. Yes, that's right. There's someone gets involved in this match too. So Scott Hall's got a chair, and Hogan comes down too, and Hogan's a bit like, why are you down with the chair? Because up to this point, it's being sold as Kevin Nash has got a problem with Savage. I don't recall seeing, I think, an issue that Scott Hall's got with Macho Man. But anyway, they come down inside, and they eventually end up just beating down Lex Luger, don't they?
Yeah, so Hogan actually stops Hall from getting involved in the match.
Am I right? Did he have the chair, or is that a Nitro?
Yeah,
he does, right?
Yeah,
okay.
He's got the chair, and then Hogan stops him from making the save, basically. And then when they end up in the ring, I assume Sting just runs down, because I think he must run in to even up the numbers effectively. And we end up with, I think Hall is kind of basically laid out on the outside, and you end up with Hogan, and it must be, it's just Hogan and Savage, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Both ending up in the clutches of, I'm trying to remember which way around it was.
Sting's got Hogan in the Scorpion Deathlock, and Luger's got Savage in his torture rack.
Yeah, so it's kind of a happy ending with the good guys of the WCW side seemingly dominating the fractured NWO side of things. And they've been playing on that as things go, that because of the divisions in the NWO, because they're not all on the same page, that WCW can take back some power in the whole dynamic. So it kind of goes off air at the end of the night, but there's still Schiavone with that regret about what happened with Dusty, even though I think they even go as far as just saying it's been a good night for WCW, which, maybe the results don't really point to that, but it's certainly the way they're painting it, because I mean, Nash certainly beat the Giant, well, almost killed the Giant, but it's still the perception they want you to end this with is things have evened up a bit. This is no longer just the NWO dominant show, because two of our great WCW hopes are currently, it's going off air with them getting the better of the NWO guys.
Yeah. They've got an issue here, and I have no idea how it pans out, although I do know about the kind of fractured different versions of the NWO that we end up with, like Latino World Order and all that sort of stuff. But they've got an issue in that the NWO, certainly aspects of the NWO are too over with the fans. That it's going to be difficult for them to try and get people to stay on the side of WCW, I think. Yeah,
I think Sting was always pretty over, so I think their hope is, he's basically the guy they can put face to face with Hogan and hope for at least a mixed reaction. I do know that they basically do end up having to go down a route of kind of having to have NWO versus NWO because they're both so over, because they are so over with the crowd, and it is like that cool heel thing.
Yeah, it's a DX thing as well.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing, where at some point, even if you try to position them as heels, you kind of have to turn at least an element of them babyface.
Yeah. Talking about DX, something that I picked up on between Nitro and this pay-per-view, do you notice how many guys were doing crotch chops?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Like, if you're in charge of WCW, you'd be saying nobody should be doing this. This is the thing, like the big thing that's on the other channel. It's really odd.
Apparently, and I remember seeing, not so much at the time, but there's these, have you ever watched on the network, there's these Monday Night Wars shows.
Yeah.
It's like a series of shows.
Yeah.
And one of them is about DX, and one of them I think is about NWO.
Right.
And they basically, be it while walking down to the ring or doing segments where they're kind of mugging the camera off at times, they're kind of speaking to each other, because Hall and Nash are pretty dominant on one channel, and then Michaels and Triple H as DX are one of the dominant elements on the other channel, but they're both saying things like "too sweet" at times, although that was more an NWO thing that it's mentioned, and the crotch chops are a thing as well, and it's almost like they're quite enjoying having a little bit of secret interaction between it, because I think we're all grown up enough now to realise these guys are still all friends. The fact that one's working on one channel, one's working on another, I assume that hasn't in any way fractured the dynamic between the group. They're probably quite happy to see the others on top on another channel.
Yeah, I never really thought of it like that, to be honest, and that's quite a good point.
I don't know if
even guys like Scott Steiner were doing it. I just thought it was odd. Anyway.
I don't know if the Bischoff would have been happy about it, or Vince would have been happy about it. But it was pretty clear when you see it in the segments on that Monday Night Wars show that it was happening. They were basically speaking to each other almost on camera.
That's quite funny. So overall, what do we think for this pay-per-view? Like you said, it's a bit of a show of two halves, isn't it?
Yeah, there was some stuff early on that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the 8-man tag. I thought it was good entertainment, good fun. I enjoyed Benoit Raven, and it's a storyline I would like to see more of. I enjoyed what we saw of Jericho. I like the little, hints at who the character is, and he obviously flies off in various directions with it, but just to see somebody taking a little bit of ownership and trying to do something with a spot that maybe wasn't intended for it. I think we're starting to see, much as I didn't love the match or the opponent or anything, I think we're starting to see Booker T become a bit of a singles protagonist. He's obviously, I think the whole idea of the television title is that it is on everything, so he's going to be on TV and on the pay-per-views against, I think, a whole variety of different opponents, but at least he's spotlighted, he's there. And pleasantly surprised, like you were with the Hall Zbyszko. You've obviously got quite a big emotional turn in there with Dusty Rhodes. The rest of it I wasn't a huge fan of. It's star power, it's a lot of guys that you pay to see, because when you've got, Hogan doesn't have a match, but he's there by Nash's side. You've got the Giant, you've got Bret Hart, you've got Ric Flair, you've got Randy Savage, you do have Luger. There's a lot in there that I think are big stars that, to be honest, that's what a lot of people who are watching it are paying to see, regardless of match quality. I remember just thinking when I used to do the channel hopping thing that we've referenced before, I would have a little flick and look and see what was going on the other channel, just thinking, these are the guys that I grew up watching, and I was enjoying the WWF show more, but there's still that sort of nostalgia pool as well,
and recognisability as well.
So a mixed show for me, and I know how big they were getting ratings and things like that. There's some of the storylines I liked, some of them I just felt I would struggle to get into a bit.
Okay, cool. I think I'd agree with your assessment. There was some good stuff, surprisingly good stuff, and there was some sort of lazy booking that was a little bit frustrating, but we'll see where it goes. Did you watch the Nitro afterwards or not? Did you?
I didn't.
Scunnered.
No. I just I think when they mentioned it was going to be a 3-hour Nitro from now on, I just thought, oh no, I can't do it. I'm not mentally prepared to go and do that. You did, didn't you?
I did. I'll very quickly kind of give you the highlights, if that's what we want to call it. So continuing the whole Macho Man and Lex Luger storyline, right at the end of the show, we've already had various different versions of NWO on the show. We've had Hogan cutting a far too long promo, and Bischoff cutting a far too long promo at various points. We've had Nash cutting promos, Scott Hall with Louis Spicolli. Eventually we get Spicolli versus someone that I can't remember in the ring, and then on the big screen we see Macho Man turning up in his own car, comes running down the ring and decks both guys. Nice. He grabs the mic and he basically tells the NWO he's no interest, he wants them just to stay away from him, and all he wants is Lex Luger. Basically the whole NWO come out to the ring and kind of stand around him, try to intimidate him and whatever. The Macho Man's brilliant at this point, and like Hogan's Hogan's saying all these different things to him, and he's just playing it off sarcastically. We're like, oh yeah, is that right? It's really, really good.
Nice.
So that's how it finishes, and we've got just more kind of fractures in the NWO.
Okay.
Some other highlights. Talked about highlights. British Bulldog shows up for the first time and has a god awful match with Mongol McMichaels. JJ Dillon bans the power bomb and any other version of the jackknife power bomb after what happened to the Giant. Like I said, they play that up big style.
And he was able to just make that decision. He didn't need to call out any legends or anything.
No, he didn't. No, I thought maybe we'd bring out Papa Shango to make that decision for him. We saw Goldberg for the first time in 1998, as far as what we'd been watching. And yeah, so Larry Zbyszko says that they're talking about what Goldberg looks like, and Larry Zbyszko says, yeah, he looks like a man back when men were men and women couldn't vote.
Wow. Wow.
It's just like, what?
That's a statement.
What are you talking about? Like he was reminiscing over a great time.
Yeah. That's yeah, you wouldn't say that now, would you?
Nah, that was odd.
No. Yeah.
And my favourite part of this whole episode Nitro was this thing that they were doing where a fraternity at a college enter a competition to have like a Nitro party thrown at their, what do you call it, dorms or fraternity house or something like that.
Yeah.
And Mean Gene's there with the Nitro girls, and you just got a bunch of drunk looking guys all like screaming down the camera, and Mean Gene looks like he's just like the cat that got the cream. He's having a great time. And there's a scene in Ready to Rumble where there's this like big party after Nitro, and it's almost exactly like that. It's really, really weird. And like I'd said to you on text, this just seems like it's a recipe for a guaranteed lawsuit. So yeah, there wasn't a lot went on. There was a really good match between Raven and Mortis, which was enjoyable, but yeah, there wasn't much else going on.
Okay.
So we'll see where things are when we pick it up in a few episodes when we get to Super Brawl.
Yeah.
And we'll see Sting v Hogan for the title. So that should be interesting. I was really looking forward to watching WCW stuff because it was new. It would be new to me. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed aspects of it, but yeah, there's a reason people talk about WCW in the way that they talk about it.
Did it feel like it was on for 3 hours, the Nitro? I suppose it won't be 3 hours, will it?
Nah, it was like
all the adverts.
2:15 or something like that. But
yeah,
it wasn't bad.
Okay.
It didn't feel like overkill. I think the pay-per-view more felt like that than the episode Nitro. So yeah. So where are we going next? What have we got to look forward to?
So are we going to ECW next?
Yeah, let's get extreme.
Okay, so the first ECW pay-per-view of the year, Living Dangerously, 1998. It takes place right at the start of March, and I've just had a quick look at the card. I think there's some things to look forward to on there. I had it in my mind, don't look at the card, because then you can just watch it blind and really enjoy yourself.
Mm-hmm. It starts in March.
Yes. Yeah.
Wonder if we should leave that until March.
Yeah, I thought there might have been an earlier in the year one, but no, they won't be running the same volume of pay-per-views as the other companies. Yeah. So it might be that we're back to WWF before that. So
what's sorry, I'm just asking you because I think you've got Wikipedia up in front of you. What's the WWF pay-per-view in February?
So it'll be the one after the Royal Rumble, won't it?
Did we say it was No Way Out, maybe? Or is that a more recent?
I will find out. I think it has this right handy button that tells me what the next pay-per-view is. So it's No Way Out of Texas is the next WWF one. So that's the one. Yeah, it's mid-February. That's the one between the Rumble and WrestleMania.
Okay, let's go in calendar order.
Yeah.
Sorry, I expected that ECW would have had a January pay-per-view as well, but that makes sense that they don't.
Yeah, I think they're maybe just working, say, 4 a year, whereas the rest are pretty much monthly, I think.
Cool. Well, let's do that then. Let's go to No Way Out of Texas, did you say?
Yes.
Cool. That reminds me, on these, did you catch this, on these WCW shows, they're advertising a pay-per-listen event?
Yes, I heard that. Is that something people would pay for?
Should we be covering that in our next episode?
I'm hopeful. You just can't get that. That's gone.
Just audio on the network. Just listen to it whilst walking the dog.
Yeah, when I heard it, I just thought, I can't believe anyone's actually.
It was like
doing that.
It's like $15 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that there's many PPLs after that one.
Nah, I wouldn't have thought so.
What have we got? Shall we spoil the main event for that pay-per-view, or should we wait?
For No Way Out of Texas?
Yeah.
I can tell you if you want.
Give me a wee taste of what we're looking forward to.
Okay.
It's not going to be Michael's, is it? Because his back is.
Yeah. So the pay-per-view is a non-sanctioned 8-man tag match.
What?
Now the lineup is quite strange, but I'll run through it with you. You've got Cactus Jack, Chainsaw Charlie, Owen Hart, and Stone Cold.
Right.
As one team. Now, it's quite a strange team. I mean,
can I guess?
What it clearly is they have a common enemy. These four.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Guess.
Triple H.
Yes.
Savio Vega.
Yes.
That's my guesses. I can't think. Legion of Doom?
No. It's the Outlaws, the New Age Outlaws.
Oh, okay.
So what I think they're doing, because this actually would have been, because it's in your house, I think these were they slightly less cost, slightly shorter shows? Is that the way they used to
2 hour
do them?
shows maybe.
Yeah. So we do have other matches on this that are other match on this, which is quite a high profile big match.
Okay.
Just below the main event, which is Kane v Vader.
Oh yes.
Yeah. But obviously, I think what they would have done with this type of card is they probably wouldn't have had the champion defend his title.
Mm-hmm.
So because basically you have to pay full price to see that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they've just affiliated guys that had issues with, this sort of expanded DX. I'm not sure how Savio Vega falls into the.
Well, he was being paid by DX to like assault Austin.
Ah, okay.
Or Los Barrique was where anyway.
I was really impressed when you picked that name out. I thought, as soon as you said Savio Vega, I thought he's going to get them all here. Missed out on the Outlaws.
I miss a pay-per-view where it's like storyline based and you get a tag match as a main event. Mm-hmm. Nowadays everything's a big match and you've got 45 different championships being defended. It
is quite a relief in a way to see the title not defended every event.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be a bit more special than that, I think.
Yep.
And it kind of devalues it having it defended. Well, I mean, it gets defended on TV now as well, quite regularly. But yeah, it's a little bit of a. There's another tag match in here.
Go on, tell us the card. I'm invested.
The concern is it might put you off, but I'm going to go through the cards. Right, so we start with the Headbangers up against the artist formerly known as Goldust and Mark Mero.
Right.
Have I whetted your appetite now?
Absolutely.
Right. We then go into Light Heavyweight Championship.
Taka
against Pantera. Great band. And
I wonder if he'll be broken after, or if he'll say
Nice.
Okay.
Do you think he'll be able to walk?
I think he might get taken to the cemetery gates. Keep going.
Should move on. Yeah, the Godwins
Oh no.
against the Quebecers.
Oh God.
Bradshaw against Double J Jeff Jarrett for the NWA North American Heavyweight Championship.
Yes.
This lineup for this match, okay, this is quite something. Ahmed Johnson, the Disciples of Apocalypse,
Oh, dear.
and Ken Shamrock
That's your face team.
up against,
The Nation of Domination.
yes,
Farouk, Mark Henry, Kama, and who? The Rock? No.
Kama, D'Lo, and The Rock.
Okay.
So the DOA are a 3-man team.
Oh,
so,
of course. Right.
Yeah, we've got 5-on-5.
Wow. 10-man target. That's cool.
And it's referred to as a war of attrition match. I don't know what that means, but yeah.
I wonder if that's similar to a Nigerian drum match.
It could be exactly the same. Yeah.
Or Raven's Rules.
Then we get into Kane v Vader, and then Cactus Jack, Chainsaw Charlie, Owen, Stone Cold against Outlaws, Savio Vega, and Triple H.
Amazing. I am in. Thank you, Paul Heyman, for giving us that gift. I was looking forward to getting to ECW, but
But you know, the waiting, it'll just make it all the sweeter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Oh well, look forward to that. We'll get into some Raw action. That sounds totally inappropriate. I don't think I should have said that. we will watch the Raw before that and talk about the pay-per-view and talk about what happens after on episode 14.
And I think the after will be good as well, because you're already kind of building to WrestleMania.
We're starting our Mania. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tremendous. Well, I look forward to that, Adam.
Yep.
Thank you for putting up with all that WCW action. I know it wasn't your favourite thing to watch, but
it's different, and I think once I get more into some of the stories, I probably will enjoy it more, because we talked about the benefit of doing this is that you're not going into the big pay-per-views cold. You kind of have a feel for what's going on. So that was step one. So as it goes, I'll get more of a feel for what's going on. Some of it I'll hate, some of it hopefully I'll really like. Yeah.
Open-minded. It's what we are. Right. Give us a shout out on Twitter or Instagram at Outlaws Pod. I will definitely be posting a video of the Big Show, aka the Giant, getting powerbombed on his head, so look out for that. But yeah, apart from that, stay safe, and we will see you for episode 14. See you then. Cheers, Adam.
Thank you.